Draft season may have come and gone this week, but while we're all still in the drafting spirit, I figured it was the perfect time to look back at what happened around this time 1 year ago. The 2022 NBA draft produced some pretty impactful young talent this season, and while some of the rookies taken early on lived up to the hype, others did not, and we saw quite a few players selected later on emerge in a big way on top of it. This all brings us to today's video, where we will be going back through the 2022 NBA draft, and 1 year later, we'll be redrafting the top 10 selections based on what we know now in hindsight. Obviously, there are no do-overs in real life, but if some of these teams were given a second chance, they would probably change things up. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. Starting things off with the number 1 pick in this redraft, the Orlando Magic still select Paolo Banchero. That's right, nothing changes at the top, because 1 year later, Paolo is still leading the way in this draft class. He won this year's Rookie of the Year award, he was the leading scorer in the class, and everything that was exciting about his game as a prospect was shown on the court this year and still applies to him and his potential now. I'm not here to say that he's a perfect player or prospect by any means, because he does need to continue working on his three-point shot to take his scoring ability to the next level, but as a big-bodied wing with a smooth handle and impressive footwork, he is a gem that the Magic would absolutely not pass up on in a redraft. Next, with the second pick in this redraft, the Oklahoma City Thunder also still take Chet Holmgren. Now, I realize this is going to be a pretty controversial call here because Chet missed the entire season due to injury, and there are still so many unanswered questions about him and his potential moving forward, but his ceiling is still sky high if he can get back healthy, and all of the things that made him a top prospect a year ago do still apply. Because of the fact that the Thunder are in no rush throughout this rebuild process, while still competing hard every night with what they have shown that they have the patience to develop his game, and Holmgren has the potential to be an absolutely elite defensive talent that can also shoot the ball at a high level as a 7-footer, so it's hard not to continue buying into the allure of the mystery box that is Chet Holmgren. Next, with the third pick, the Houston Rockets in this redraft select Jalen Williams. This is where the switch-ups begin because in hindsight, the Rockets probably weren't too pleased with how their selection of Jabari Smith turned out. They were clearly looking for a talented two-way wing player who can score the ball efficiently, handle secondary playmaking duties, and become an impactful defender, and all of those things apply to Jalen Williams, who was originally selected 12th overall and broke out in a big way for the Thunder this year. Williams finished as the runner-up in the Rookie of the Year race this season after he exploded in the second half of the year, and if he carries that momentum into next season, he could prove to be what the Rockets thought they were getting when they drafted Jabari Smith. Next, with the fourth pick in this redraft, the Sacramento Kings also still select Keegan Murray. At the time of this draft last year, the Murray selection came with a ton of scrutiny, and I'll be honest, I had my doubts about it as well, but Murray proved to fit in perfectly there, and immediately carved out a key role in their lineup as they broke out as one of the top teams in the Western Conference. They've got the shot creation in the backcourt already, and Domantas Sabonis held things down inside, so alongside those guys, they just needed some floor spacers and defenders, and Murray shot the ball incredibly well from three, and he defended hard. Some other players may have more upside than Murray in this draft class, but I don't think any of them are better fits for what Sacramento needed at the time. Up next, with the fifth pick in this redraft, the Detroit Pistons select Shaedon Sharpe. Sharpe was originally taken 7th in the draft by the Trailblazers, and coming into the draft, he was a pretty big mystery. He was actually supposed to be in this year's draft class, but he chose not to stick around at Kentucky in college, declared early for the draft, and now, after his rookie season, I'm an even bigger fan of his potential than I was back then, which was already pretty big. Shaedon Sharpe is one of the most athletic guards in the NBA today, and he has a natural feel for scoring the basketball that you just cannot teach. His role fluctuated a ton this year as the Blazers were trying to make the playoffs, but when they fell short of that goal and started to shut down players like Damian Lillard, Sharpe was able to play more consistently at the end of the year, and with more freedom, he showed he could be one of the best guards in the league one day. The Pistons originally took Jaden Ivey, likely because they were searching for a scoring guard to pair with Cade Cunningham, but I think in hindsight, Sharpe was someone someone with way more upside in that kind of a role. Next, with the 6th pick in the redraft, the Indiana Pacers still select Bennedict Mathurin. As we progress through this, we're starting to see that quite a few teams actually managed to nail their picks pretty well in the first go-round. Mathurin was originally taken by the Pacers here, and I don't think they would feel inclined to look elsewhere if given a chance at a do-over. The Pacers have their floor general of the future in Tyrese Haliburton already playing at an all-star level, and after that, you go get the best player available. Mathurin this season may have been inconsistent as a scoring threat off the bench, but realistically all rookies are, and his flashes of upside were very promising. He finished his rookie season averaging about 17 points per game, and could easily be a 20-plus point scorer for years to come in his prime. Up next, with the 7th pick in the redraft, the Portland Trail Blazers select Walker Kessler. Kessler was originally selected 22nd overall in the draft, so he's the biggest riser of the class, and after the year the Blazers just had, they would definitely have used his services well. The Blazers' defense was a nightmare this season, and bringing in Kessler would have given them another option to help anchor the defense, as he was one of the league's best shot blockers immediately in his first season, swatting over 2 shots per game. He's a tremendous rebounder, he's got excellent touch around the basket as a scorer, shooting over 70% from the field, and he could have provided both immediate impact and promise for the future for them as the team if they ever decided to commit to a rebuild. Next, with the 8th pick in the rebuild, the New Orleans Pelicans select Jalen Duren. The Pelicans entered the year with high hopes, but Zion Williamson couldn't stay healthy, their depth wasn't strong enough to overcome it, and their original pick of Dyson Daniels provided good defensive stretches, but gave them almost nothing offensively. Jalen Duren was the youngest player in the entire NBA last year for the Pistons, and I believe he has the talent to be a top two-way center in the league one day. Duren could have developed his offensive skill behind Jonas Valanciunas, who himself is an example of a center whose offensive game has come a long way over the years, and in stretches where Zion and Jackson Hayes were out injured, he would have gotten plenty of opportunities to play a big role. Next, with the 9th pick in the redraft, the San Antonio Spurs select Jaden Ivey. Ivey is our first example of a top pick falling a bit, and it's not necessarily because I'm down on him as a player, but it's just that I think others have shown more upside than him a year later. Plus, if Ivey were to have landed with the Spurs, he would have been a perfect fit. The Spurs' 2 best young players this year were Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell, 2 wing players, and Trey Jones was forced to start way too many games for them this year at point guard. Ivey would have been able to step in as the team's lead guard from the jump, and would have fit in very well alongside that core that the Spurs have put together, and with him pushing the pace and learning under one of the best coaches in the NBA, he would be off to a strong start in his career too. And finally, with the 10th pick in this redraft, the Washington Wizards select Jabari Smith. The Wizards made arguably the worst selection in the lottery last year when they originally took Johnny Davis, so they're a team who would gladly welcome a do-over. They would also be through the moon if one of the original top 3 picks fell into their laps here. Jabari Smith may not have looked like a player that will go on to dominate the league like the Rockets were hoping when they drafted him, but it's way too early to give up on his potential, and he still has tantalizing physical tools to work with. I also think it would have helped him to start his career in a situation like Washington, where he was playing around veteran playmakers and scorers like Bradley Beal, Kyle Kuzma, and Kristaps Porzingis, instead of the young, arguably selfish young core that Houston has, who have been knocked quite a bit this past season for playing a selfish brand of basketball and not necessarily involving Smith as much. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you think these teams would take 1 year later. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.